Good morning, or whenever you see this. Not legal advice. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, write on, do anything. Give me your input, give me your output. Like to hear back from you. Today's going to be an exclusively non-GTII video. I'm going to talk briefly about the tariffs and the Supreme Court, and about the Delaware Supreme Court and Elon Musk's pay package. Before I get that, three quick things. If I could read my own writing. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then God said, "Let there be light." Then you could see there was nothing. A wise man once said, "It's better to say nothing at all." An even wiser man didn't say that. And last but not least, and of course this relates in no way to what I'm doing today. So unfortunately, and I know this is an issue, but there's very little things that are built, very small number of things that are built in the USA today. But I just bought a portable TV, and it said it had a built-in antenna. I must be so dumb because I have no idea where antenna is. Anyway, talking about tariffs. So obviously the Supreme Court, and I've done a few videos about tariffs, and if you want to go back and review all of them, like, comment, and subscribe. But I did a video, and one of them in particular was about Leonard Leo, who was, I think it's his correct name, and he was a confidant of President Trump in the first term, and he kind of put the court together as it is constituted today to favor the right, obviously, and not the right of the political spectrum. And after the tariffs were introduced in China, he has, I think, a bunch of organizations, and one of them funded a lawsuit opposing the Chinese tariffs. So it was a guy who had set up the Supreme Court for Trump, now opposed the tariffs. Specifically, it was the Chinese tariffs, but in general, opposed it the way they were being implemented. And again, he was responsible, I think, for getting Barrett, Kavanaugh, et cetera, on the court to shift the balance of power. So there was a case that or related cases went to the Supreme Court, and the issue of tariffs went up. My view, and in my videos, and again, go back and feel free to go back and watch all my videos, but my position was that as structured, that the tariffs were unconstitutional because it was beyond the executive power of the president and the executive branch. But there were other ways you could impose the tariffs. You just have to do it in those ways, and it requires taking surveys and other methods that are slower. But if they had been started when the term started in the beginning of this year, the executive branch could have imposed those tariffs if they applied using those particular statutes and regulations, but they elected not to pursue that. So they've been challenged on it, claiming that the tariffs as employed to this point in time are unconstitutional. And the concern is that if they're declared unconstitutional, then will they have to be paid back? And we don't know precisely, at least I haven't heard a precise number of the funds actually collected. So I don't know what those funds are, but I'm sure they're significant. So since I might as well speculate as to what the outcome will be, I think what's going to happen, because this was my position anyway, I think the tariffs are unconstitutional. However, I think the court, which is leaning towards the right, will create or construct an argument to the effect that the case is novel and that there were other means to impose the tariffs that, if chosen, would have caused those tariffs to be imposed. And in light of that, if in fact any amount of tariffs have to be repaid, it's a minimal amount, because this was a novel case, and nobody really knew what the outcome would be. And again, because there were other alternative ways to impose the tariffs, it's really no harm, no foul. So I think in the end, they'll say that the tariffs are unconstitutional, but the amount that they are ordered to repay, if at all, will be relatively small. I think they'll also say, however, that in the future, if the executive branch elects to pursue tariffs on the same basis, that in light of the ruling in this particular case, it's unlikely that those tariffs would be sustained, and they would probably be ordered to be returned in the future if the executive branch chose that method as opposed to another method that exists. And in that way, I think the Supreme Court will kind of say that the tariffs as imposed are not proper, but won't penalize the White House to the extent that they could, or at all. And they'll lay down the law that if in fact you want to seek tariffs, you have to do it in the existing ways that are allowed, or there's new legislation that creates additional manners, but you can't do it just because you claim there's an emergency or whatever the exigencies says. And again, what's interesting again is his ally who set up his court was against the tariffs. So that's my call on what the Supreme Court will say. Complete speculation on my part, but I think they'll find the tariffs improper, but they will find a way to let the government keep most of the money, and then we'll put down a declaration that in the future, just do it, in essence, do it a different way. So that's my prediction. The second part was Elon Musk and the Delaware Supreme Court and his pay package. So many of you may know that there was litigation in Delaware about his pay package. Go back and look at my videos, but my position was that multiple. My position was that rescission was an improper remedy sought, and I'll explain that in a second. And I thought, I guessed, I predicted, and again, go back and look at the videos, that the amount of attorney's fees eventually would be decreased to about $60 million. Now, I think what was sought at some point in time in attorney's fees was over $1 billion with a B. So it's significantly less. But I'll talk about the attorney's fees in the second part. So what's rescission? Rescission is where you put everybody back into the same position they were before you started. In this case, the issue was the pay package and contract that Tesla was going to give to Elon, and he would get all kinds of stock, etc. But the case wasn't decided until after Elon had provided all kinds of services for Tesla and to Tesla. And Tesla had increased in value and received the benefit of that. So my point was, at the time, how could you possibly put everybody back in the same position? How could you put Tesla back in the same position? You can't. So I thought rescission, that was the chosen remedy, was the wrong choice. That was plaintiff's choice. They could have chosen damages. I mean, they could have pursued damages. Perhaps they didn't think there was real damages or the damages would be limited, but they made a choice. And again, at the time when I did the videos, and please feel free to review them, I thought it was the wrong remedy. So a trial court found it was the correct remedy and ruled that the pay package was invalid. It went up to the Delaware Supreme Court. The Delaware Supreme Court determined, in effect, that rescission was the improper remedy. They gave plaintiff, so it was a class action. Actually, it was a shareholder derivative suit. But the lead plaintiff got, and they would usually be paid like a fee, a side fee for being a lead plaintiff. But in this case, what the court ordered is they'd get $1. So the award to the plaintiff was $1 because they, in essence, claimed that the wrong procedures may have been used, but that was corrected later on, and Tesla benefited from Elon being the CEO. So that's one side of it. On the attorney's fees side, the question was, what was the reasonable, or at least the court examined what the reasonable value of services was. And I think if I recall, if you just did a straight hourly of the amount of fees they had put in, and I'm not saying the fees were justified because I thought this was a bullshit case, to be honest. I thought this was just purely a case for the attorneys. That was my view all along. And again, you can go check me out on that. But the attorneys asked for, some gargantuan sum of money. The amount of fees they actually incurred, if you multiplied their hourly rate by the amount of time they put in, I think was a little over 20 million. It may have been more as time went on, but I think it was in the 20 million. The court gave them 60. So it gave them 3 times the amount of their actual fees. I think they wanted to put the case to bed, so they gave them a little bonus so they didn't waste more time taking this up to the U.S. Supreme Court, although since they were seeking a substantially amount more in legal fees, they may still take it up. But I think that was the Supreme Court's little gift to these attorneys to shut them up. Do I think that there was a reasonable value of 60 million in their services? No, because I didn't think they did anything of value, because I thought the case and the theory was improper. How could you, just asking that question, how could you, as the Delaware Supreme Court, give these counsels $60 million if the remedy they chose was the wrong remedy and the plaintiff got $1? So if the plaintiff got $1, how could the value of the plaintiff's attorneys be 3 times the amount of time and hours they put in? So I'm kind of arguing the other side. Doesn't make sense. I think 60 million is a gift. I think they did. There's no benefit they served, and it's turned out Tesla moved from Delaware to Texas, probably along with a lot of other companies. And in essence, what these attorneys have done is taken money out of the coffers of Delaware and shifted companies to other states where the shareholders, good or bad, will have less chance to prevail on lawsuits against companies. So if you're evaluating the benefit of the attorneys, how could you say that was positive? And why would 60 million be justified? Anyway, but it probably will end the case. My guess is, and again, I predicted, the amount of actually attorney's fees that was awarded, I said 60 million. I think it was somewhere between, I couldn't tell the exact number, but somewhere between 55 and 59. So my guess was pretty close. And since they had sought like $1 billion or plus of fees and got this, they're probably not very happy, but 60 million bucks is a lot of money, especially for what this case was. So just quick summary, tariffs, I think the tariffs will be deemed unconstitutional, but the court will find a way of making it so the government doesn't have to pay back a significant amount of that. And Elon's pay package case, the Delaware Supreme Court ruled that the rescission remedy sought by plaintiffs was improper, so the pay package goes through, but still awarded about $55 to $59 million to plaintiff's attorney for getting $1 for the plaintiff and choosing the wrong remedy. Whatever. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Be well. Take care, everybody. Have happy holidays. Hope everybody's enjoying their time with their families, and we'll see you soon. And that's all I got to say today.